experience where two have truly become one. God is at the center of us, our purpose and vision in His love. We dedicate our today, tomorrow, and always to You, our King. Bless and let there be love in our home. The marriage experience ordained by You alone. Marriage experience. The marriage experience ordained by You alone.
Welcome to the Marriage Experience program with Ayakunle and Boside Santos, where they explore what it means to cultivate a God-centric marriage by delivering realistic and biblical wisdom, pointers, and insights from couples and individuals on the marriage journey. Join them today as they share some insights. Enjoy.
Hello, family, and welcome back to the Marriage Experience program. We're always so glad you're here with us at our virtual table, and hope you have your warm or your cold drink and ready to get into today's conversation with us. Right, it's been warm this past few days, so perhaps a cold drink would just be right. And every week we share practical tools and spirit-led conversations to help you build a strong, thriving Christian marriage. And as always, it's a real honor to walk this journey with you, growing together and building marriages that reflect God's heart.
Oh, yes. Welcome to today's episode of the Marriage Experience. It's always such a joy to have you join us for these weekly conversations. If this is your first time sitting at our virtual table, a special welcome to you. And to our regular listeners, our veterans, welcome back. We love hearing from you, and we love also having you here. As we always say, the marriage experience, there's something here for everyone, no matter where you are on the journey of marriage. If you joined us last week, we explored the unique joys and challenges of parenting a child with special needs. You know, how it reshapes marriage, how it stretches our faith, and how it deepens our dependence on God. We were reminded that God's grace meets us right in the middle of our mess and in the middle of our miracles as well. Today, we're staying in that heart space of compassion, of resilience, but we're shifting focus a little bit into one of the most sacred and stretching paths of a couple can walk together, and that's the journey through long-term illness. Or even terminal illness as well.
Yeah. So whether you're the one receiving care or the one giving it, we want you to know you are not forgotten.
No, you're not.
And the quiet faithfulness, the hidden pain, the daily courage, it all matters deeply, and it's all held in God's heart. And today we'll be talking about what it means to stay emotionally and spiritually connected when everything else is changing. We'll share words of encouragement and the reminder that even in illness, love still speaks, still gives, and still endures. And when a long-term or terminal illness enters the story, everything shifts, and that's real. And it doesn't just affect one person. It changes the rhythm, the dynamics, it changes the roles and the expectations in the whole marriage.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
Suddenly you're not just husband or wife, you're caregiver, and you're the patient or maybe the advocate and also the comforter.
Now, the routines you once took for granted, which we've talked about over the last couple of years, date nights, shared chores, or even simple conversations, can begin to look very different. There's grief to consider, not just about the illness itself, but about what's been lost. Things like the future plans, physical closeness, even the easy laughter. And with that grief often comes a tangle of emotions, the fear of the unknown, helplessness, when you can't take the pain away,
Yeah.
or even guilt for needing rest, and that is a big one.
Very, very real.
It's
Very
I
real.
have had personal experience of that when I was caring for my sister. Of frustration when you feel unseen. But here's what we want to say to every couple walking this road: God sees you. He's not distant from your ache. Psalms 34:18 says, "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit." He's close to you. You are not alone in that hospital room. You're not alone in that quiet kitchen. You're not alone at night, when the tears flow.
Yeah, there is a sacred kind of love that shows up in this small steady things like sitting together through chemo, if that's the path you're walking, or learning how to clean wounds or give meds, bringing water in the middle of the night, or simply reaching out for your spouse's hand even when words run out. Now, these moments might seem small, but they echo heaven. They are the very heartbeat of covenant love in sickness and in health. That is the covenant that we made with our spouses, or as some versions state, in health and in faith against sickness. And if you're in this season right now, we just want to say you're doing a holy work. Your endurance is worship, and your care is Christ like. Even when you feel weak or weary, God's strength is holding both of you. We'd like to share a few ways couples can stay emotionally connected and spiritually grounded in the midst of chronic illness, because intimacy doesn't end when circumstances change. In fact, in many cases, it deepens. And we'd just like to add that we don't undermine what you're going through. Some people may not even have the time, or they may not have the opportunity to take a breather and to just step back away from it all. But we're here to stand with you and to say, well, God sees, God is here.
Amen. One of the hardest parts of navigating a long-term illness in marriage is this. That's the shift in roles. The shift in roles. What once felt like a balanced partnership may begin to feel uneven. The healthy spouse becomes the caregiver, and sometimes even the breadwinner. The emotional anchor, the the logistics manager, everything. All this rolled into one. And this, of course, were not job descriptions that you expected to have to take off. And if you are that spouse, it's okay to admit that it's hard. There's grief, not just about what your partner is going through, but about how your life has changed as well. You may feel overwhelmed, you may feel lonely, or even resentful at times, but that doesn't make you a bad spouse. And I've got to repeat that. Feeling overwhelmed, feeling lonely, feeling stretched before, beyond what you think you may be able to bear, or even resentful, does not make you a bad spouse. It makes you human.
Yeah,
It makes you
and
human.
for the spouse who's ill, the one who's going through that illness, there's a different kind of grief. The feeling of being dependent, of losing your sense of usefulness or identity, of being unable to give like you used to. There's often that unspoken question, am I a burden now? But here's what we've seen over and over. This is where vows become more than words. In
It's where
sickness,
rubber hits the road.
absolutely. In sickness and in health, becomes real, very raw as well. And more than anything at this point, that's when sacrificial love is in motion. And it's not perfect. It's not even poetic, but it's sacred. So how do couples stay grounded in the middle of that shifting dynamic? Let's just look at a few simple but we reckon powerful tools. And one of the most important, we talked about this last week, is to schedule help. You weren't meant to carry this alone, la- um, you know, allow your friends in, your church family or professional caregivers, let them share the load. so that both of you can have moments to breathe, to rest, and to just be.
That's true, and you know that is really really important, because as a caregiver, I remember speaking to a professional caregiver and talking to her about how to look after patients with dementia, and she stated one thing. She made one very important point, that it is very hard to look after someone with dementia, because you're not only dealing with emotional challenges of not being able to connect with the person emotionally, but also the physical parts as well.
And the changes that's going on within the person.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
one thing she stressed was that, look, it's always best, of course, if possible, but it's always best to have at least two carers for each dementia patient, because it gets really, really stretching. It stretches your emotions, it stretches your physical ability, it stretches everything. So you need to have time to rest, and for someone to take over, while you catch a breath. Now, illness can consume your time and energy, but try to keep small routines that connect you emotionally, like a 5-minute prayer. It could be 4 minutes, it could be 6 minutes. What we're saying here is it's got to be, something like a short prayer, a shared cup of tea or coffee or whatever your spouse can tolerate, listening to worship music together. These little anchors remind you that you're still a couple, not just the patient and caregiver, you're still a couple. And then to the caregiver, you are doing your best. Rest is not failure. We've said that already. We're going to repeat that a few times tonight. Rest is not failure. It's not being selfish, or it's not being uncaring. For instance, I guess virtually everyone would have traveled by air, and one of the briefs you get, especially when children are on board, is that those of you who have children, if there's a loss of pressure, you should put the mask on first before trying to help your children.
We have a saying that when fire is burning you and burning somebody else, first of all, take off what's on your body,
Yes,
so that
yes.
you are able to to help the other person.
Yes,
Yeah.
and that's the bottom line.
Yeah.
So you are in a place to be able to help the other person, using having that drive, or allowing that drive to take over, where you go, oh no, I really want to care for him, I really want to care for her. What you're doing is actually making the situation worse,
I mean, it's a
because
case of you can't pour out of a vessel
an empty vessel,
Exactly.
what you don't have.
Yeah.
Now, to the spouse who feels unwell, you are not a burden. What I often say is, look, you haven't gone to Tesco or whatever local shop, or Walmart, wherever you are listening to this program. You haven't gone there to go and buy the illness. It's not something you wanted. It's not something you planned for. So you should never see yourself as a burden. You need grace on both sides, and God says His grace is sufficient for us. Remember, this season doesn't define your value or your love. God is in the middle of the challenge. He's not looking for performance, He's present in your pain.
You're listening to the Marriage Experience program with Ayakunle and Bosade Santos.
Let's talk about how couples can still experience intimacy, joy, and even laughter. Yes, laughter in the middle of illness. Because love doesn't vanish, like we said, when life gets hard. It just learns new ways to show up. And when illness enters a marriage, it can feel like the emotional connection gets lost in all the medical routines, the fatigue, the hospital visits. But here's what we've learned. Intimacy is not just about being physical. It's the look across the room when you both know what the other is feeling. It's praying together, even if it's just whispering a few words through tears. It's that shared silence that still feels like home.
And for couples walking this road, you don't have to lose your closeness, but you may feel the need to redefine it, and that
Absolutely.
is what the real message here is. It's a new picture. It's a new
A new
situation,
normal,
a
like
new
they
normal.
say.
Yes,
Yeah.
you want to ask this question gently and often: how may I love you well today? Now,
That's
because
so
you cannot,
powerful.
you cannot, you cannot depend upon the past experiences you've
Or
had
even
or knowledge. Or
yesterday.
yeah,
Yeah.
because every day changes. The answer might surprise you. It could be something simple, so simple like giving space, sitting quietly, or making a drink, a warm cup of coffee, tea, or whatever it may be. Sometimes love is found in showing up consistently, not having all the answers, but just being there. Now, here are a few practical ways to remain emotionally and spiritually connected, especially when physical affection may be limited or non existent at all. Leave small notes of encouragement or gratitude where your spouse can find them. You don't have to write a novel. You don't have to write an encyclopedia. Well, for those of us who still remember what the encyclopedia were, it's a simple. You're still the one I love waking up next to. Just that simple statement can melt walls of weariness.
Now, you could watch a favorite movie you both love or reread your wedding vows. We've been talking about doing that. We did that a couple of years back ago, when we just reread our vows to each other. Not because it was our anniversary, but just because we just felt we
Just
wanted,
because.
yeah, for just because, so you could look through old photos and remember the story God has been writing in your marriage. And even going out, even if that is not possible, you could set aside 30 minutes for intentional connection. I told you before, I'm sure you've heard me say it several times. My husband has become the scented candle connoisseur, and you could light a candle and just change the ambience and the atmosphere of the home. Play your favorite worship music, say a prayer together. If you can dance, get up, both of you dance together. Spend the time that you have together in quality and memorable way. Let your living room, let it become a sanctuary. And let's say this clearly again: intimacy isn't all about doing more, it's just about being present. I mean, that may be a buzzword these days, but it is real. It's about being there for one another. And there's beauty in just sitting side by side in the stillness, knowing that you're not alone.
I really like that. Intimacy is not about doing more. Like you said, it's about being present. Being present. You may not be able to hold hands like before, but you can still hold hearts.
Very, very precious. Yeah.
That doesn't require any physical strength. God sees those quiet connections, and He honors them. So if you are in that place today, know this: closeness is possible. Joy is still available. God is still near. Let's talk about spiritual weariness, where your partner feels dry and you wonder if God sees. We've been there too. Let's discuss this for a bit. Now, for couples of faith, this part of the journey can feel complex. You're paying the price, you're believing, you're standing in faith, but at the same time, you're adjusting to a reality that isn't changing the way you expected. Let's be honest, it's okay to wrestle with that tension. It's okay to actually, it's good to continue to pray, believing and standing in faith, but it's okay to be honest with whatever pain or challenges that you may be going through.
Yes, we believe in healing. We've experienced it severally in our family. I mean, I'm sure I've told a story of my healing, and we certainly believe in miracles. And I mean, we've seen it in our families time and time again. But we also believe in the miracle of being sustained when you're praying hard and nothing changes. You're doing everything that you know to do. You're standing in faith and nothing changes. You know, when your strength runs out and grace is all that you have to carry you, sometimes the healing comes in the form of peace that makes no sense. You know, we've had to wrestle through that and just accept that in instances, maybe not necessarily in situation of illness or things, but then in other circumstances in our lives we've had to, just be held by God. And you know sometimes it comes through a doctor. God gave them. God gave the wisdom to for medicine to be able to help us. And it could be a treatment plan or even a deeper closeness between both of you. Paul said this in 2 Corinthians 12, verse 9. He said that this was what God said to him. But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. That has become a word that's close to my heart in recent times. Paul prayed for healing 3 times, and God's answer wasn't what he asked for. But what God gave him instead, that was enough, his grace. And it wasn't just for him to survive, but it was for him to keep walking in purpose.
And when you go through sort kind of times, challenging times, where you pray for God to solve a problem and you get a different answer, one of the things that we've learned is always to trust that God knows the best for you.
And he's good.
He's good. So it may not, the solution may not make any sense. It may actually feel counterproductive. But if you believe that God does know what he's doing, he loves you, and he knows the best for you and is doing the best for you, then we are in a good place. So maybe you're in that in-between space right now, still believing for healing, but learning to live in grace in the interim. Let's encourage you with this. God sees your faith. God hears your prayers, and he'll work things out for your good. He'll work things out for your own good. If you've ever whispered, Lord, I believe, help my unbelief, you're not lacking faith. You're asking God to help cover that shortfall. God meets you in that place because you have asked. He said he will do. He's not only the God of deliverance. He's also the God who works through the valley with you, through the valley of the shadow of death, through the valley of the shadow of death. And sometimes that's where the most beautiful parts of our marriage, of your marriage, are formed in the trenches, formed in the tears, formed in the waiting as well.
When you even do a study of valleys in the Bible, you would find out that the valley, it may sound like the valley, but there is much growth that takes place.
Yes.
There's a lot of growth that happens in the valley. The valley was where the dry bones came alive. So remember that. Now, keep holding on in faith, not just for a perfect outcome, but for a faithful God who shows up in the process. We have to give God permission to be God. We have to give God permission to be sovereign in our lives and to allow him to work out what he's already written concerning us, regardless of how the circumstances may look. And if you're feeling weary, that's okay too. Lean on each other, reach out for help. And remember, you're not walking this alone. God has put people around you that you can actually lean on. And like we suggested last week, build a support system. And you invite community, counseling, and your church family into the journey without feeling like a burden.
Without feeling like a burden.
Absolutely.
One of the biggest lies couples could believe in seasons of long-term illness or terminal illness is this: we have to be strong on our own. You cannot be strong on your own. We cannot be strong on our own. Strength doesn't always mean silence. It doesn't mean isolation. God created a community for support, for prayer, for practical help. Even Jesus, in his darkest hour,
Mm.
asked his disciples to stay and watch with me.
I heard
To
that in a devotional the other day.
yeah, stay
Yeah.
and watch. We heard it in church today as
Oh,
well.
was it? Yeah.
Yes, stay and watch with me.
Mm.
So if Jesus needed that kind of community or support, then hey, who are we? So if you're walking through this season, here's what we can encourage you to do. One, to let people in.
Mm.
Let them bring a meal. Let them sit with you in silence. Let them pray when you feel too weary to find the words. Let them stick around with you to help prop you up.
So these also are some practical things that you could do. You know, maybe designate a family advocate or friend and who can share updates or help organize support so that you don't have to be the person who's always reaching out to everybody. This family member or friend can, just let your other friends know exactly what's going on. And this would relieve the pressure on your spouse to manage everything. That's the caring spouse. Join a support group, either online or in person, if it's something that your schedule would allow you to go to. And uh, you know support groups are where other couples understand the journey that you're walking, and reach out to your church leaders. We've said this, and we invited church leaders who may also be listening to have this as part of the care package that the church is offering. Ask your pastors for spiritual care, for a counselor or a small group leader, if need be. But, they can't help you if they don't know that you have the need, especially if they are not aware that you're walking the path that you're walking down. And this part is especially important. Accept the help without guilt. Again, accept the help without guilt.
You're listening to the Marriage Experience program with Ayakunle and Bosade Santos.
Now, needing support doesn't mean you're failing. It simply means you're honoring the truth that you were never meant to carry heavy things alone. We've seen it over and over again, how God shows up through people, through the text that comes at the right moment, through a neighbor's help, through a worship song shared by a friend. That's not a coincidence. That's God's compassion extended through his body. Your marriage is worth fighting for. And some days, the best way to fight is simply to ask for help. You want to take a moment right now to think, who is someone you can let in this week? Who is that particular person who you may not have let into your inner sanctuary, as it were? Who you can let in, who wouldn't judge you, who would add to you, and who's willing to help.
And whose help would be relevant, right?
Yes.
So we know that long-term or terminal illness can actually feel like life is shrinking. But even now, there's so much that you can still build. You can still build love, laughter, legacy. You may not be building the life you once imagined, but you are building something even more eternal. Moments of meaning, memories that last, a faith story for your children, if you have children, and loved ones that they will carry with them. Legacy isn't just about what you leave behind. We've mentioned this before. It's about how you live right now. It's about what you deposited in the people that you leave behind. It's, even in fragile moments, you can choose purpose. You can tell your story. You can bless your children, live wisdom for birthdays, milestones, or future seasons. Just be intentional about this time. A short voice memo can become a treasure, and even every few days, write something down together, a funny memory, a powerful prayer, a moment that brought joy. Read them back as a source of comfort and connection. It could be as simple as you want it to be. And the point is that you choose joy on purpose.
You choose joy on purpose. And let's not underestimate the power of blessing. Speak it over each other as often as you can. Bless them. For instance, by saying, I see God all over you, or I'm thankful for how you're showing up today, or I will always love you even in the midst of all this. We're not ignoring the pain, but we are making room for the beauty that can still grow beside it. It isn't, the end of your story. It's a sacred chapter. And with God in the midst of it all, it still holds purpose. It's powerful, and you're blessed with the peace of God.
One thing that I feel in my heart right now that we should say is that somebody listening may say, oh, but you don't know my pain. You don't know how, what I'm going through, how intense my situation is. We want to encourage you. God is still in the middle of it. You may not see God. Everything may seem like God is distant. He's quiet. He's not saying anything. He's not doing anything. He's not helping. But the bottom line that we've come to know is that God is a good God, and He's not an absentee Father. He's ever present. When He's quiet, when it appears like He's quiet, one thing you must understand is that He's not leaving any stone unturned. He's working through every situation. Ayakule heard a story. I don't know if we've shared the story before, but he heard a story about a lady. Some lady was kidnapped and was in the bus.
Yeah, we shared it last week or 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, was in the bus. Well, let me share it again. Was on the bus with her kidnappers, and the kidnappers were driving past another lady who was standing by the side of the road, and they were contemplating, should we kidnap her? Going back and forth between them. Remember the story of I believe it's the Amalekites, that God put confusion into their midst. And they were contemplating, should we not, should we not. Eventually, they decided they were going to leave her, and they drove past her. Now, that lady, unknown to her, God delivered her from that. That is the way God is. You may not see Him walking or working, beg your pardon. You may not see Him working, but remember that song? Even when I don't see Him working, He never stops working for our good. He's always there. He says He will never leave. He will never forsake you. So please, please, please believe that God is always there, and that He won't leave you. He won't forsake you. He will work things out for your good. Even if death ends up being the end of this story, He's still there, and you still win, because death could be the healing that God could bring into that situation. Now, if today's episode spoke to your season, maybe you're walking through a long-term illness with your spouse, or you've recently received a diagnosis, know this: God is right there. We can't overemphasize this. He's right there in your story, in the prayers whispered in waiting rooms, in the love that keeps showing up. So today we speak a blessing over you wherever you are. And we pray that may your marriage be strengthened with supernatural peace, and may your hearts find rest in each other and in the arms of God. May you laugh again. Yes, even here in the midst of this. We bless your journey with comfort in the hard days, courage in the healing, and an unwavering sense of hope that goes beyond the diagnosis.
Just listening to that, it has been very it's been a very emotional session. And if you're supporting a friend or a sibling or a parent through this, be the arms that lift, the heart that listens, the presence that stays. And as always, if this episode has helped you, we want you to share it with other people who might need encouragement right now. Look, we are all in a situation where we really do need help, different season of our lives. You may never know what a word of hope can do. And so as we wrap up tonight, we say keep showing up for each other, keep inviting God into the process. And remember, you are not alone in this marriage experience.
Yeah. Once again, we want to thank you for joining us tonight on the Marriage Experience program on Heartsong Live Radio. That is Scotland's first Christian radio on DAB Digital. We air on Mondays and we have a replay on Wednesdays. If you're listening to this program on a Monday, please stay tuned for a replay of Arise with the Loho, and that airs on the hour at 11 o'clock. And if it's on a Wednesday that you're listening to the replay, you will have Annette. That's What's on Your Plate with Annette on the hour. Annette is a lifestyle magazine show that, through its interview series, takes a deep dive into the lives of people doing amazing things in their communities. And we continue to ask you to please keep supporting the radio station even beyond our recent fundraiser. Even that fundraiser is still going on, but keep on supporting us. We'd appreciate it if you have a standing order to keep on helping us so that we can keep bringing you dynamic programs like the Marriage Experience and other programs that we have on Heartsong Live, so that we're able to build a community of faith by spreading the good news and building faith and fellowship across the world. Visit heartsonglive.co.uk/donate to donate towards the work. Every little helps.
We also appreciate your feedback at mxperience@lidiosantos.com. That's an email address. And for all episodes, previous episodes, and this episode as well, they're all available on our YouTube channel. The handle is at Marriage Experience, experience without the E. Also, don't forget to download the Heartsong Live app for quick and convenient access to all our live programs, up-to-date weekly schedules as well. It's also where you can catch up with programs that you may have missed in the right.
Once again, it's been a pleasure spending time with you this evening at our virtual table, and we'll look forward to seeing you again next time. We bid you goodbye for now, and do have an awesome rest of your week. God bless you.
God bless you.
Join Ayakule and Bosade again next week on the Marriage Experience program as they bring God's truth to help you build your marriage God's way. Till then, remember, marriage is God's idea and it is a good thing.
The marriage experience all day